Okay, in this video, we're going to make this animated rainbow text, changes colors, and then also shrinks and expands. So the first thing we'll do is go to a CodePen, or whatever text editor you'd like to use, and add our single HTML element. Let me make this bigger. It's just a paragraph, and we'll add our text, hello, or whatever text we want to expand and shrink and change color. And that's it. Now back in my slides, there are two steps really to working with keyframes. The first one is that you define the animation itself. So on its own, nothing will be animated by this code. Nothing will change immediately if I copied this and pasted it into my CodePen. What I would have to do is then assign the animation to an element. So it's two steps, defining it and then assigning it. So the actual definition itself looks like this. The basics are, it has to start with @keyframes. And again, I'm not showing all the vendor prefixes. You can use a prefixer for that. So it's just @keyframes. And then after that, you must name it. This name can be pretty much anything, but it should be a name that encapsulates what the animation does. Something like jiggle or rainbow text or spin or something like that, depending on what the animation does. So those are the two beginning things. Then we have open curly brace and closing curly brace. And then inside, we define all of our steps. We can add as many steps as we'd like. I'm just doing 0%, 25%, 50%, 75, and 100. But if we wanted, we could also add in a 6% and a 7%. Or we could have 0, 37%, and 100, and that's it. So really, that's up to you and what your animation requires. But in our case, we're doing even intervals. So let's actually go define this now. So we'll start off with @keyframes, rainbow text, and then inside we just start with 0%. What happens there? Well, we're going to set the color to red and font size to be 20 pixels. And then at 25%, a quarter of the way through, we want color to now be orange, and we're going to leave font size alone, and we'll only change that at 50%, where we want it to be at its peak. We want font size to be 40 pixels, and color should be yellow. Let me make this a bit larger so you can see the whole thing. So we're part of the way there. 75%, color is green, and that's it. And then we have 100%, color is blue, and font size goes back to 20 pixels. Okay, so as I mentioned, nothing changes here. Our paragraph is unstyled, nothing is affecting it. So what we need to do now is actually apply the animation. So there's a bunch of new properties here that you haven't seen, and don't worry, we'll go over them in future videos. There's a lot of properties, including a couple that actually aren't here. But what we can do is just copy this for now. So I'll go back over to my CSS and paste it in, and you can see it starts animating right away. So the first and most important thing I want to highlight is this animation name. So this must match whatever animation we want it to correspond to. So rainbow text refers to this animation we defined down here, and so that's the animation that's going to start. But then there are a couple of other things. How long do we want it to take? Animation dash duration. Right now it's 3 seconds. I could slow it down a lot. And now you can see it progresses much slower. I could do 1 second, and we get a very quick animation. And of course, we can change the timing function just like we did for transition. So I could do ease in, perhaps. And if I slow it down, let's go to 5 seconds. And you can see the impact that ease in has compared to linear. So that should be a review of timing functions, although the property is called animation timing function, not transition. Then we've got an animation delay. So this is another thing that's new that we haven't been able to do yet. Nothing is triggering this animation. It's running as soon as the page loads. There's no hover, there's no state change that initiates it. Instead, it's going right off the bat. I could add in a 3-second delay, and if I refresh the page now, it's not animating, but now it starts animating. So that's the point of animation delay. And then we've got iteration count. So we'll play around more with this, but as you can see, it's set to infinite. So this is how many times the animation runs. So if we wanted to, we could change that to 2. Now if I save, I reload the page, okay, the animation goes. I guess it's a little slow right now, 5 seconds, but here's our second time through. And then as you can see, it just stops and we're done. So even in this quick little intro video where we see the syntax for the first time, hopefully you can see we have a lot more control over these animations. Yes, we're doing a trivial, silly little thing, but there's a lot more that we can do. Even just with this single animation to make it rainbow, we can have it run infinitely 10 times, 1 time, 50 times. We can have a delay and so on. And we could also, like I said, we could add in another point in here. So let's say I wanted to get purple in as well. So I could say that, okay, at 85%, we're going to set color to blue. And then at 100, it will turn to purple. And what will happen here is that we no longer have this evenly spaced interval of color. So it goes from red to orange to yellow to green at the same interval, but then it quickly jumps to blue and then quickly jumps to purple. So let me enlarge that a bit so you can see it. Let me put this back to infinite, if I can spell it. Okay, and I'll zoom in and pay attention to how fast it changes to blue and then to purple. As you can see, it's much shorter. So, we can put whatever we want in here. Just to show you another example, I don't have to animate the same exact properties. I could do something crazy, like halfway through, add in a transform. Let's do translate X, and we'll move it 200 pixels across the screen. So now it's not only changing color and shrinking and growing, but it's also moving across the screen. And this is as good a time as any to mention that, yes, I'm breaking the rule that I set out earlier, that the 4 properties you should try and animate are opacity, rotate, scale, and translate, which are all transforms. Rather than using scale, I decided to use font size and color, and I was really doing that just to make this as clear as possible and involving the least amount of new information. But yes, if this was going to be on a production site, I don't know why you would want this, but if you did, it would be much better to replace font size animations with scale, which could achieve the exact same effect, but it does it much more efficiently. Okay, so that wraps up this video. We saw basically how to define a keyframe first, give it a name, define the individual frames, the steps along the way, and then we saw how to assign it to an element, in this case, all paragraphs, which I guess I should specify if I add another paragraph here. They both have this animation. So it gets annoying very quickly in this case. And then we have these other properties around things like duration, timing function, iteration count, and there's actually a couple more that aren't here. So we'll focus on those later on.